starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Are You Making the Most of Your Marketing Budget? Presented by CCIQ partner DMS Creative. My name is Amanda Wheeldon from CCIQ and I'll be your facilitator for today. Our guest presenter today is Director of DMS Creative, Kim Ebenestelli, and Kim is joining us remotely today from Toowoomba, so welcome Kim.
Hi Amanda, thank you for inviting us.
So today's webinar will run for approximately 30 minutes and will include a Q&A session at the end. You can send through your questions at any stage throughout the webinar by typing them into the question box that you will see on your screen. You'll also receive a copy of the presentation slides and webinar recording by email later today. So I'll now hand over to Kim to talk about maximising your marketing budget.
Thanks Amanda. Well, as Amanda said, my name's Kim Ebenestelli and I'm a director and co-owner of DMS Creative. We're a local marketing and graphic design business and we're based in Toowoomba. And our job is to help businesses like yours to get more customers and for us to give you the tools for you to be able to do this. So as a business owner, you've most likely already invested in hiring staff. You've probably already invested in your building plant and equipment and also in product and service developments. So today I'm going to be talking with you specifically about your marketing budget. And I think of this as money that you need to invest so that you can achieve the income targets that you've set for your business. I'm yet to meet a business owner who has a money tree growing in their backyard. So for all of us, the challenge we face is how we invest the dollars that you have available to help you get the best possible return. And that said, the number one question that I am asked by business owners is how much money they should allocate to their marketing budget. So the very first thing that I get people to think about is what it is that they actually want to achieve. So when I'm running workshops with my customers, I spend a lot of time drilling down on this one particular point. Predictably, the starting point is normally that they want to increase sales across all areas within their business and across all of the markets that they serve. And I think it's really important to take time and really think about how you prioritise these areas of desired growth based on the profitability of each of the products in the market segments, the ease of delivery of your product to those market segments, as well as the potential for growth in sales. This is really important, particularly if you're working within a limited budget. And the more detailed you can be about exactly what it is you want to achieve, the easier it's going to be to build a plan to help you achieve your goal. So think about what you want to achieve, think about what's going on within your industry. Now, if you think about marketing as a pie, if the pie represents the total dollars that are available for your market, are you looking for a larger slice of that pie? Or are you trying to make the pie bigger? Or are you trying to protect the piece of pie that you have, your existing slice of pie, from an aggressive competitor? It's really important at this time that you start thinking and being as specific as possible. Think about whether you want to focus on attracting new clients to your business, or do you need to focus on maintaining the relationships you have with your existing customers and protecting that customer base? Do you need to generate more leads and more foot traffic for your business, or are you getting plenty of leads but are you having trouble converting these into sales? At this point, it's also really useful to think about and define which target audience suits each particular product that you're offering. Think about the pain points that the customers have and how it is that your product solves this particular pain that they feel. Really critically analyse the real opportunities that exist for each of the products and start assigning some priority. Once you've really identified and been able to articulate your marketing problem, then we can start working on how it is that we can solve that problem. So The next step is to write down what it is you think you need to do to achieve the sales goal that you've just identified. If your focus is on attracting new customers, then marketing theory tells us that potential targets need to come into contact with your brand approximately 7 times before they're going to feel comfortable doing business with you. So for business customers, this might include things like driving past your shop front or your sign. It might be a conversation with somebody who's used or who recommends your service. It might be seeing your TV ad or hearing your ad on the radio, receiving a brochure in the mail, or a Yellow Pages ad. Think yourself about the types of processes you go through if you're finding somebody to fix a faulty appliance that you have at your house. If, however, your focus is business to business and you're trying to sell to other businesses, then it might be the professionalism of your tender response document, or a promotional DVD that you've produced, or a project microsite, or your presence on LinkedIn. So we call each of these items consumer touch points. We also know that 57% of a purchasing decision is made before a potential customer ever makes direct contact with your business. So it's worthwhile taking note of that and thinking about that fact, and thinking that every time a potential customer comes into contact with your brand, they're subconsciously judging you and making observations. Each and every time they're getting more information. They're looking for consistency, they're looking for relevance, they're looking for evidence that you are who and what you say you are. Then when it comes time to make the purchase, as we know, when people need a product or service, they go online and they Google it. And if your brand is pops up in the top 4 organic search results, or if you're appearing in Google AdWords, then chances are that the customer's more likely to at least click on your website link. Then once they're on your website, you have on average less than 1.5 seconds to engage with that customer. And you need to make sure that your content on your website is strong, that it's engaging, and that you make the best possible first impression so that they spend longer on your site before clicking off to perhaps one of your competitors. So the next step in setting your marketing budget is working out how much the sales strategy that you've identified, that we've gone through in step 2, is actually going to cost. And there's no avoiding this step. It's time consuming, it's laborious, but you need to go through and cost each option and see how much it's actually going to cost to put the plan that you've put together into action. You'll have to get quotes, you'll have to ask questions, and you'll have to find out the best way to go about doing things. And once you've sussed out all these costs and worked out what it's going to be, then you can compare this investment with the return that you think that you're going to achieve, or that you hope you're going to achieve. So for example, you've put together a sales campaign that comes to a total of $10,000 in expenses, and you think that by executing this campaign you're likely to receive an additional $80,000 in sales. Then on the surface I would say that I would think that that would be money that would be well invested. You'd be looking at an 8-to-1 return. If, however, you weren't comfortable investing $10,000 in a single campaign and you only wanted to spend, for example, $5,000, then you'd need to work out what sort of sales uplift you might be able to achieve and see if that return is something that you're comfortable with. You can see that this approach is very different to simply assigning a percentage of turnover to your marketing budget, which isn't typically the most effective way of setting a marketing budget, particularly for small businesses. So the next question is, how do we measure the results? I've talked about the return on investment, but how do we actually work out what that return on investment is going to be, and how do we actually measure those results? Well, very simply, go back to your objectives and ask yourself how it is you're going to know whether or not you've actually done what it is you've set out to do. I'm a really strong advocate in measuring your promotions and campaigns, and marketing should be viewed as an investment that you make within your business. And as with all investments, you need to see a return. However, I do urge you to be really sensible when it comes to measuring your campaigns and promotions. And as with all investments, it's not always reasonable to expect to see immediate growth, particularly if there's a lengthy sales cycle, and that is the time from when a customer first becomes interested in your product or service through to when there may be an initial sale. So there's examples of some businesses that when they first go out to market and people first become aware of them, that they've mapped that there's a process of approximately 4 years until when that customer would actually perhaps become interested in their products. On the converse side, you might have other retail products where you may expect a more immediate return and a more immediate growth. So this leads me to ways then that businesses can actually waste money on marketing. So the first way is not by analysing tactics in isolation. So as the saying goes, the whole is greater than the sum of all of the parts. One of the most frustrating things that I often deal with is that when we've built a plan with a customer, that sometimes the customers want to then analyse each individual piece of the puzzle in isolation and just do this one little piece and see if that's going to work. And then I just want to do this one other little piece over here and see if that's going to work. Now this presents a whole heap of difficulties because when we mix media as part of a comprehensive plan, we portion individual media differently and when I say media, it's not isolated only to media, but individual collateral and individual media working together in harmony so that we actually develop this comprehensive plan. Now if you pull that plan apart and only run one specific individual component, it may give you a false reading on the effectiveness of that particular media and or the for example, TV. So if you were running only a small portion of TV and you ran that in isolation, it might give you a very different result than if you were actually considering it as part of the overall campaign. It could also significantly weaken your expected reach and frequency. So reach is the number of people who see and hear your message, and frequency is the number of times that they hear or see it. The greater the frequency, the more likely you are to be top of mind with your target audience when it comes time to purchase. The next way that I see people wasting money on marketing is when they start to suffer what we call brand fatigue. And this is where business owners or staff who see their brand all day, every day, start to think that their brand is getting tired and looks boring and that it needs a freshen up. And it's really important to remember that you see your brand all day long and your target customers don't. And there can be a lot of reassurance for someone looking for a trusted brand or one they recognise when it comes time to make a purchasing decision. Now that said, there's a number of legitimate times that brands can and should be updated, particularly when it comes to issues around market positioning. And it should never ever be just because you're getting bored. Now this leads nicely into the third way I see businesses wasting money on marketing, and that's through inconsistency in branding. And inconsistency in branding makes it harder for customers to recognise you and your brand. So like the diagram on the screen, if you're consistently known for being an orange circle and you decide to freshen things up and just randomly become a blue hexagon just for this one ad, and you don't change any of your other collateral, then customers who see this ad where you're being featured as a blue hexagon probably aren't going to recognise you. And that means that the money that you've spent on that ad has effectively been wasted. Now, if you only take one thing away from today's webinar, I really hope that it's this. It's really important that each customer touchpoint is consistent from a brand perspective. That means you need to use the same colours, the same logos, and the same brand voice in all of your communications. The repetition of your brand in the marketplace is what helps customers to become more aware of you and your product, and it's that familiarity that helps your customer feel more comfortable buying from you. Now, a really good example of how this can become unstuck would be through two businesses that you'd all be aware of, one being Mitre 10 and the others being Masters. So when Masters decided to launch and it announced that the proposed look and feel for its stores was going to feature white lettering on a blue background, Mitre 10, some would say quite rightly, said, well, hang on a minute, we have had the domain of having blue backgrounds and white text for quite some time. We own this. This is part of our trademark. It's part of our brand. It's part of how people recognise us. You can't simply come in and start, leveraging off all the brand loyalty that we've achieved over some time. And when you look at the two brands side by side, there is an undeniable resemblance between the two. Now, where it's really interesting is that Mitre 10 sought an injunction on Masters in actually executing this look and feel, and Mitre 10 actually lost. And the evidence that was cited is that Mitre 10 had not been consistent in their execution and the use of their brand across all of their stores, and that clearly, because they hadn't been consistent in the execution and the way that it had been done, that they didn't place value in their brand and they didn't see that as a real asset to their business. And because they, through lack of execution, hadn't taken care to make sure that their brand was executed in the same way across all their stores, that they really weren't able to claim that it was part of their trademark. And that's how Masters were able to come in and have such a similar looking brand for such a, some would say, such a strongly competing product. So consistency in brand truly is one thing that is very, very important, and really is a way to help try and protect your brand moving forward, as well as making it easier for customers to recognise you in the marketplace. So I've spoken about how to set your budget and how to measure results, and the most common ways that people waste money on marketing. So the next thing I want to focus on is how you actually can focus on maximising your marketing budget. Well, the very first way is to be strategic. When you've got a plan and know exactly what it is you want to achieve, it's much easier to work towards achieving it. The next way to help maximise your marketing budget is to know your limitations and to invest in professional services when necessary. Now, if you don't have the skills personally, or any of your staff don't have the skills or the time to create a professional and polished brand for your business, then you should engage the services of a professional marketing and design company, just as you would engage a lawyer to help with legal matters or an accountant to help with tax planning if you felt you didn't have the skills to do that yourself. If you haven't had experience dealing with a marketing and design agency before, there are a number of ways that we work with businesses to be able to help you develop the tools that you need so that you can grow your business. We have, as an example, we have a number of clients that have dedicated marketing departments, and for these clients we provide design and branding services as well as media planning services and digital support. We also have a number of clients who don't have any marketing staff, and for these businesses, the business owner or other staff members, usually already busy with a number of other tasks, are often laden with the responsibility of marketing as well. For those clients, we work really proactively with them. We help them work out what it is that they need to do to help them drive their sales, and then we give them a hand so they can actually do it. And the services that we offer range from workshops and strategy sessions to help businesses plan their way forward, through to brand audits to help identify areas that need improvements, through to design services to help execute anything that's, that perhaps has been uncovered throughout one of the strategy sessions. The third way that I recommend to help maximise your marketing budget is to put yourself in your target customer's shoes. Conduct a mini audit of all of the ways that customers currently come into contact with your brand. Be objective and look at whether, from their perspective, they're going to be seeing all orange circles, so to speak, or whether they're going to be seeing some blue hexagons randomly appearing throughout your materials. And the final way that I recommend is to be deliberate and be consistent in all that you're doing. Stay focused, don't become distracted. Set yourself monthly targets and constantly check your progress, and build systems and strategies so that you stay accountable. So now I'll hand over back to Amanda for any questions that you may have sent through.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kim, for that presentation. We do have some questions. First one from Karen. What's the average age of a brand, and where it should actually approach a brand makeover option? Sorry about that.
That's okay. Amanda, or Karen, thank you very much for the question. Karen, I would say that there is no set formula for when a brand, or set age for when a brand should certainly be thinking about or wanting to approach a makeover. I would say that it's very much dependent on your market conditions. Now, if you see that you're losing market share to a competitor because there's perhaps a perceptual issue associated with your brand, then I would definitely say that that's a time to look at perhaps a brand refresh or something to help bring you in line with what it is your customers are actually looking for. But I definitely wouldn't say that there's a time limit on when a brand should be changed, simply because, you know, well, it's been 5 years and 3 days, so now let's update that logo. Definitely not.
Excellent. We have a question from Nikki who wants to know, what should we do when there are issues affecting tracking the performance accurately?
Sorry, can you just repeat that question, Amanda?
And I think she's referring to their brand. What do we do when there are issues tracking the performance accurately of the marketing activities?
Nikki, I'm not entirely certain what you mean. So I think what you're asking is when there are issues with tracking, I would say get creative and think about how you can find ways to track it. Go back to what it is you really want to achieve, and if it comes down to how many new leads you can generate within a month, then bring it back to those levels and say, right, well, are we actually getting those new leads? Or if you're wanting to see an increase in sales, then bring it back and say, are we actually seeing that increase in sales that we're looking for? It can be difficult for people in small business to find ways to accurately track each individual part of the marketing strategy in isolation, which is what I was speaking about before. And so when that happens, then maybe look at it from a more holistic perspective.
Excellent. Thanks, Kim. And Nikki, Kim's contact details will be on the last slide. So if there's more information that you're seeking, you can send a question to her directly. Another question from Danielle. Is there a recommended percentage we should allow for marketing to reach sales targets? For example, I've heard 15% of sales target.
Look, it's entirely your own decision. I tend not to use that methodology unless you're in a retail business, because there are just too many variants within each individual industry, and it becomes really difficult, particularly when you're in a regional area as well, because you may need to be a lot more creative in the way that you're actually the way you're actually delivering your marketing and who your target audiences may be. 15% may be way too much, or it may be nowhere near enough, which is why I've really gone down the path of saying, well, what is it you need to achieve, and what is it you need to do to achieve what it is you want, and then is that going to give you a return that's acceptable? And if not, then go back to the drawing board and think differently about how you might be able to achieve the same thing. The 15% is really far more relevant to retail businesses in a retail centre than most small businesses in the community.
Okay. We have a question from Kelly, who wants to know your thoughts on email campaigns and whether you think that they're effective.
Thank you very much for the question, Kelly. Look, without question, there are definitely some instances where email campaigns are effective. Again, I think it's really important to go back and determine what it is you want to achieve, and to really think about the target audience that you need to appeal to and what it is you know about that target audience. If you're in a specific business where, I'm just trying to think of some examples off the top of my head, but if you're in a particular business and you're trying to do business-to-business sales, then an email campaign may not be as strong for you as perhaps a LinkedIn campaign, or if you're or perhaps a trade show. So it really depends on your industry, it depends on the product you're selling, it depends on the target audience that you're trying to reach, and it depends entirely on the behaviours that those people that they like and that they accept. It may be that they love email and that you'll get great response from it. It may be that they're very, very difficult to attract through email. So it's a company by company situation, but email is certainly one tactic in a whole bunch of tactics that are useful when used in the right way.
Okay, thanks, Kim. We have a question from Paul who wants to know, is there a rule of thumb method to estimate local market share?
Absolutely not, Paul. I'm very sorry to break that news to you. The rule of thumb for, well, I mean, the only way you can really estimate market share, and it's a complete estimate, is how many dollars you think people spend on that product or service and how much of that as a percentage they're spending with you. Beyond that, without doing extensive market research, there really is no other way of determining that.
Okay, and a question from Emma. You mentioned that a percentage of turnover is not necessarily effective in setting a marketing budget. What key indicators do you consider relative to determining a marketing budget total?
Thanks very much for the question, Emma. Emma, I would say in this particular instance, exactly as I've said earlier, it's really about what it is that you want to achieve. I have a customer I was speaking to recently who, for example, we've been running or working with them on running, they're a retail business, and we've been working on running some promotional campaigns. They've had a huge increase in foot traffic through their business, but they haven't seen an increase in sales through the till. So they know that they have an issue with their staff being able to sell the products. So they're getting people into their shop, but they're not actually converting those sales. In that instance, you know, the budget that they need to allocate is really focused around training and sales training and a whole lot of other customer service standards to try and convert those sales. Now that's a very different issue to a new business who's establishing themselves for the first time, who are wanting to work out how it is that they can be introduced to clients that they want to meet. I have another example of a client who wanted to meet a particular type of other business person. They're a business brokering business. And so one of the things that we have identified as part of their strategy is membership to networking organisations, so that they can meet the types of business owners that they want to meet in a more informal setting and start developing relationships with them. So both of those things are wildly different, and yet they're both part of the marketing strategy, but strategies that are very specific to those individual businesses. So if we simply just assigned a percentage of sales turnover or projected sales turnover to either of those businesses, you can see how there would be a disparity between the amount budgeted and the actual need that those businesses have, and how that money is perhaps needing to be best spent. So it's really a case of really honing in, identifying where the key issues are within your business, and working out what it is you want to achieve, why it is you need to achieve it, where the real opportunities to get the return are, and then working backwards and doing your homework and your costings that way.
Thanks, Kim. Another question we have in from Graham. What if you can't afford a graphic designer?
Graham, thank you for your question. Graham, I would say something that I think that's really important is that business owners realise that you only have one chance to make a first impression, and that perception is reality. Now, I'm yet to meet a business owner who tells me that they don't have a great quality product or service, and that they don't value their customers dearly. At the same time, people don't always necessarily think that customers see the correlation between the way you present yourself and your business and the quality of the product or the service that you offer. But I can tell you that that is absolutely the case. I would say, Graham, that when it comes to graphic design services, as far as I'm concerned, it should be considered in the same line that you would consider electricity costs in your business, or any of those other things. It's just or rent, or any of those other things that you need to pay for as part of, stationery or computers or IT services. It's one of those things that's completely necessary to put your best foot forward, and so that businesses take you seriously.
Great. We'll take a couple more questions. I know we've been a bit longer than half an hour, but we've got lots coming in. I have a question from Andrew, who wants to know, how important do you think social media is to brand development? And he's in the retail food industry.
Hi Andrew, thank you for your question. Andrew, I would say that I think social media is really important when it comes to brand development. Keeping in mind that, as I said earlier in the presentation, 57% of customers' purchasing decisions are made before they ever make contact with your store. So Andrew, if more so for professional services and other services, but definitely also in your industry, being in retail food, that if people are Googling you before they come and actually dine at your store, or before they try your service, or they actually, if they're looking for a professional service and they're online checking you out and they find poor reviews, or they find incomplete websites, or links that don't work, or people giving you a hard time, then it's certainly not helping your cause. As I said, perception is reality. So, I definitely think that social media is certainly very important. It really is the modern day word of mouth.
Great. And just one last question. It's probably on similar level with social media. Leanne wants to know, how do you rate publicity in the marketing mix?
Well, thank you very much for your question. So I think publicity is a really important thing. And again, look, it depends entirely on the business, and it depends entirely on the industry, and what it is that you're actually wanting to promote. Publicity and media events and publicity stunts can be really important and can be used really, really well in some instances. They can also take an enormous amount of resourcing for businesses that aren't equipped to do it. And so it's one of those things, if it's part of your content strategy, to be able to engage or to use publicity, then you need to make sure you're doing it well, and you need to make sure that you're consistent in the way that you use it and the way that you do it. And again, it's worth, I think, getting some professional advice, because it can go very badly if it's not done well. The other thing that I would say about publicity is that you're not guaranteed. If you write a media release and you send it to the media, you have no guarantee that they're going to run with your story, particularly if they see it as being something that's really overly promotional. So I think that's something you need to be really careful and conscious of and aware of, that if you're going to invest all this time and energy into a publicity strategy, that it is going to give you a return.
Great, thanks Kim. Thank you everyone for your questions. There are a few questions that we didn't get through to, but I'll take those questions offline and send them through to Kim later today, and she'll be able to send you a response. So shortly you'll see on your screen Kim's contact details if you'd like to contact her. Kim, did you want to just take us just briefly through that obligation-free meeting that's up on the screen at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So as Amanda said, my contact details are on screen, and I encourage you to give me a call and just have a chat with me about your business, where you're at right now, and where you're at with your marketing. Look, the conversation's completely obligation-free, but obviously there are more questions today than what we're able to answer. And you know, if there's some way that I can help you clarify your thoughts or answer any other questions, then I'd be happy to do so. So feel free to give me a call.
Excellent. Thanks, Kim. Thank you for taking the time out of your day today to present, and thank you to everyone who was tuned in today. Don't forget to check your emails today, as a copy of the presentation slides and webinar recording will be sent to you, along with Kim's contact details as well. Don't forget to check the CCIQ events page for upcoming webinars and events. Thank you very much, and we look forward to having your company at another webinar in the future.